Alright, hello everybody. I kind of wanted to make this video as a way of kind of reflecting on a lot of missed opportunities for making a lot of currency this league in PoE, and kind of a reminder to myself, and maybe a reminder to everybody else, that recombination is fucking overpowered, and it should be abused as much as possible. So, let me explain. So, this glorious contraption that was added, a while ago in Sentinel, I think, is a really, really, really good way of making really, really, really good gear. Like, it isn't necessarily the best way to make top end gear, but in terms of gear that costs in the low tens of divines, it's really, really, really strong. And there's been some content creators that have made videos about this, and illuminated a few ways of making this, but I feel like it's still not drilled into the community's head enough about how ridiculously strong this thing is, right? So the recombinator gives you a lot of ways of making items with perfect prefixes or suffixes, either through things like brute force methods or N blocking, which are two examples that I'll discuss. There might be other kind of good ways of using this, but these are two that I've zeroed in on. You can make 4 or 5 mod outcomes. I don't really talk about this here, but it's a simple extension. For example, like with brute force, if you're brute forcing prefixes, you might just spend a little bit more time, roll like one perfect suffix, and hope that it carries through the recombination. And one thing that you should really keep in mind is that during all of this, there's a few specific examples I go over, but and I'll also discuss how to identify opportunities where this kind of an approach might be feasible, not necessarily just on that one method. Alright, so why do you care? Alright, when there's a gold rush, sell shovels. Everybody knows this, I think. Like, it's been discussed a lot. So this is kind of one way to, sell shovels in a gold rush. So there's multiple content creators in every league that, popularize gear, and they might not necessarily outline the best way of getting it. Like one example, I think, and if I'm wrong, I sincerely apologize. This is going off of memory, but for example, like Tuna's VFOS, which is like this ring here, which isn't even perfect. You can see it's like not tier 1 fire res. I think that's tier 1 chaos. I think that's tier 1 elemental. I think that he mentioned that you can get this with like Reforged Chaos and Prey, but actually Recombination can make this really, really, really cheap, and I think that that was one missed opportunity for myself, for example. There's Big Daddy's Budget Armor Stacker ring, which I think is like a tier 1 fire res, tier 1 all res, and then an attribute as the third one, which I also figured out was very expensive to craft with that recombination. And then even Captain Lance's in-stacking helmet, this monstrosity with an abyss socket, tier 1 in, and an elevated intelligence can be crafted with recombination in a way that's a lot cheaper than the way that he outlined. There's other kind of regular gear that I'll discuss. There's like in-stack and ES gear. Like items with triple tier 1 energy shield can be crafted really, really, really efficiently for a fraction of the cost that they sell for even now, like 2 months into Mercenaries League. So there's this recombination guide from 3.25. I'll switch over to it in just a sec. That gives you kind of some tables for recombination probabilities. And so the couple things to keep in mind is that for simple brute force recombination, each step that we're going to discuss is about 1 in 3 to succeed. So there's this guide here that was posted on Reddit. All you have to do is just search for like recombinator table in PoE. And the thing that you really, really, really want to see is, where's the table? Here it is this table. So what the columns of this table are how many mods go into the item, and this is not necessarily unique. Like if you have 2 of the exact same suffixes going into the item, that's 6. Oh yeah, note that this is for one affix group, so consider the prefixes and suffixes independently. So if you have 6 of the same prefixes and suffixes going in, you have a 72% chance of getting a 3 mod item output, right? The important numbers here are for 2 items, so for 2 affixes. So if you have 1 prefix on both items that are going in, you have a 33% chance to get 2 mods out. For 4, you have a 31% chance of getting 2 items out. So these numbers are both about 1 in 3. Later, I'm going to discuss 5, where you have one item with 2 and 1 item with 3, and so that's like a 57% chance of getting a 3 mod output, which is pretty good. All right. So you'll see that for NNN recombination. So, for example, there's this thing. Now, don't ignore the intelligence. I didn't see one without the tier 1 intelligence with this much energy shield, but you can see it's got triple tier 1 prefixes, so tier 1 flat, tier 1%, and then tier 1 hybrid with stun and block. And so these, I mean, this one's listed for 35 div because it has tier 1 intelligence, but you can make this, the triple tier 1 prefix sells for like 15 to 20 divines, and you can make this for maybe 5. So the overall approach here is step 1, you just get a bunch of cheap bases, you pick them up off the ground. Like if you unhide Twilight Regalias on your item filter and just pick them up and throw them in a tab until you have like 20 of them, that's pretty good. You can do this with Warlock gloves, boots, and circlets. That's what I've been doing. You can do it with necrotic armor as well. There were ruby rings for like armor for the budget armor stacker ring, for example, or for Tuna's VFOS. You just, you make yourself a regex for the tier 1 mods that you're curious about, and you just alt spam them all. You put them all into a big tab, like for me, I was using, I've got this tab for crafting bases that is mostly cleaned out, and you might just have like one tab here that is just laid out with a bunch of, gear. So maybe regalias, maybe gloves, maybe boots. You just lay them all out here, you set your regex, or whatever, and then whatever. You set your regex and, spam, you take the item, you put it aside as soon as you get and then as soon as you get 2 items that are like decent, I don't know, maybe I'll just demo this real briefly. Can't take that long, right? You just alt spam until they highlight, and then you just kind of chuck them together. And if this takes longer than another 5 or 10 seconds, then maybe I'll just go and Path of Exile example these. Or maybe I'm just sunk cost. Okay, well that doesn't want to go right now. Do I have examples here? Here's a 2 mod item that I made before. Oh, here we go. Whatever. This isn't tier 1, but it's sufficient. So we craft something to make the recombination cheaper. In this case, we'll just craft some strength, because basically if you have, I believe that the dust cost is proportional to something like the average affix tier on this. So if you craft like a dog shit affix, then it'll bring the cost down. But basically, this is the idea. You make like a 1 mod and 1 mod, you throw them in the recombinator, and you hope that you get 2. And I didn't, but that's fine. That's like a 2 in 3 chance. So you would just keep doing this. You would roll you would take a bunch of gloves, and you just keep rolling them until you get that, right? And then eventually you get, 2 mod items. So you might recombinate until this is an example with a helmet. You might get tier 1 ES and tier 1 hybrid. And each of these mods is really, really cheap to hit, right? The average is about 20 alterations, even though I just got unlucky. So just keep that in mind. So, like 60 alterations on average to get one of these 2 mod items. And then on another base you get also 2 mods. They can't be the exact same, right? You need 3 different mods, but so in this case it's like flat and hybrid, and then here you got flat and sorry, not flat, like percent and hybrid, and here you got flat and percent. And so you smash these 2 items together, and you have a like 2 in 3 chance, or 1 in 3 chance to get a 3 mod output, right? And that's dirt cheap, right? That finished item, so once you slap on like tier 1 hybrid, this item, like 502 to 550 ES, that is selling for at least 10 div, right? Earlier in the league, probably even more, when everybody was kind of on this gold rush to want to put together like, energy shield stacking gear. And, and all it takes is picking up a bunch of Lich's circlets off the ground. But you might be wondering, okay, well, I'll quickly just go over this of when to use it, right? When you have an item that is cheap to find, right? The bases are cheap. You can just pick up this like higher level ES bases off the ground while you're mapping as normal, which is kind of what I recommend because it's boring as hell to just sit in your hideout all day and do this. And if the item's value is dominated by one affix set. So for ES gear, you pretty much want like a lot of ES and then maybe one good suffix. So you can just craft that thing with really, really, really good ES and then either decide to craft the intelligence yourself, or you can just sell it and let somebody else do it. So if it's dominated by one affix set, if the item is good because it's got 3 really good prefixes or 3 really good suffixes, then you can consider recombination. One thing I'll note, and I don't do the math here, but you can probably add that on. I can leave that as an exercise to the viewer. If the item is sufficiently cheap, you can even just buy the bases in bulk, right? Like, I think the bases for all this ES gear is probably about 20C a piece at most from the last time I checked TFT, which, 20 bases, and if it takes about 25 or so attempts, you delete like 25 items doing this. That's like 500C. That is not actually that much, right? You might be asking about gold and dust costs. So if there's like 25 recombinations and you're dusting Yoke of Suffering, which I think is not the most ideal, but that's just kind of what I've been doing since I've been running a lot of fortresses and just dusting the yokes instead of selling them. It's about 6.1 thousand dust per chaos. So what does that add up to? Oh yeah, with gold as well. When I just checked TFT, it's like 11 divs for 2 million gold, so it's about 1,000 gold per chaos. So each recombination, I would kind of roughly estimate this much for each attempt at recombination, sometimes more, sometimes less, but you'll note that, the costs are way, you can triple this and basically break even, because the total cost at 500k gold, 1 mil in dust on average is about 3.7 div, right? So you're paying 3.7 div plus a bunch of bases that you just picked up off the ground in order to make an item that is at least 10 div in terms of output. So that's pretty good. There's also, so I'm going to leave that, brute forcing method behind, and, you can imagine, examples of how it's used. Let's just go over a few more because I prepped a few examples. So let's say, that's the wrong example. So let's say like a ring, right? So in this case, we're looking for a ring that has some, not very good mods, right? We want tier 3 chaos res and 2 resists that are also tier 3, right? We're not even looking for very high like rolls here. We're just looking for simple chaos res and just a bunch of res. This might be league start, this might be like VFOSs again, right, where you want fire res and all res or something like that, and that would be more expensive than this setup, but whatever, let's just keep that simple. So, you might do harvest, reforge, chaos, right? Well, look at the success rate, right? It's like you'll have to do 200 of these in order to get an item with even just these, dog water suffixes, right? And maybe there's cheaper ways of doing this craft using fossils or something, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that this is a lot of attempts for something that in the end isn't even that good, right? Like, let's see the items we made, right? Like, we've got, okay, tier 1 chaos res and then a couple of tier 3 suffixes. This item came out pretty well, I guess, tier 1, T2, right? But in the end, it's, what, 200 attempts? And, I don't know, let's just see how much that costs right now. Like, 100 yellow juice. And how much is juice going for right now? Let's see. Where are you? Yeah, like, it's like 9C, 8 or 9C per attempt at making that. So it's like 8 or 9C times 200 attempts. That's a lot. It's like 10 divs, right, to make an item that isn't really that good. And let's just be generous and assume that it might be half that cost with a more optimized method, right? But you could just literally just chuck a bunch of rings into a dump tab, manually roll for like chaos res, all res, and another resist, or maybe an attribute, right? Like, I think this is another example where you might target something with essences. So in this example, we're assuming that we've got fractured all res, and we want another tier 1 resist and also strength. I think this is like Big Daddy, like a ring for Big Daddy's budget armor stacker guide. So you have like a tier 1 resist that you're gonna swap over to fire using harvest. You need strength because you need to equip stuff and things like that. And then you fracture all res because you want it you want more over cap fire. Well, that's going to be like 38 rage essences, which sounds really cheap, except I believe that when I was looking at this earlier this league, like over a month ago, a fractured tier 1 all res or a fractured tier 1 like fire res, they were going for double-digit divines, right? So the base itself, just for a fractured base, was, you know, quite a bit more than this craft is expected to cost you, right? And alterations are like free. They're like, you know, 10 per chaos, so you know, you might spend maybe a divine or two of alterations on making one of these, so it's still dirt cheap, and it's still, you know, fundamentally worth it to brute force recombinate when you need an item like that. And, you know, if I realized this, I probably would have made a lot of mirrors, or, you know, at least a lot of divines, just crafting this gear and selling it because people didn't realize that you could recom these, at least not commonly. There's even these like super expensive items, and I covered up these two affixes, but that doesn't matter. The thing you should pay attention to here, this is an expensive base, right? We got double influence, we've got high quality, we've got one suffix that's expensive to get, one suffix that's kind of easy to get, and one influence mod that's also expensive. This is elevated. We're going to do the example that's not elevated. One thing to keep in mind when doing this kind of a thing, and this is where N and N crafting can shine, so N and N is non-native natural. They cannot carry over to the wrong base. So on an ES base, you can't roll strength, dex, or suppress, but you can roll these on a strength and dex base. They still contribute to mod count for recombination weighting, right? So if we go back to this table, or if we go back to the table I mentioned before, 3 plus 2, that's 57%. When you have 5 mods, you have a 57% chance of getting 3 in the output, right? So the strategy here is that we can divide and conquer these suffixes. We get one really expensive mod on one base, right? On a cheap, you know, on a second cheap base, and then we get a combination of a easy to get mod and the other hard to get mod on the other. So let's kind of go over that here on Path of Exile. So let's say we've got, where are you? Did I just delete that tab? I did. Whatever. We'll just remove one of these. So, okay, so let's say we've got our Lich's Circlet with like super high quality, I don't know, fine, let's restart this. Helmet, int, Lich's Circlet, let's say, yeah, we got, you know, a high quality base, right? And just because I'm lazy, I'm not going to double influence this, but okay, so we've got influence, whatever, right? If we wanted, I think I did have an example of this here. Did I not? No, I guess not. Okay, we'll hunter influence this. So now we've got this Lich's Circlet that's hunter influence. We might do fundamental fossil spam until we get a tier 1 int and %int, so just to save you all the time. Where are you? So we'll just, you know, we'll essence spam until we get this, and this might take you like, I don't know, 10 divs or something. And then the base is also maybe going to be like 10, 12 div to make, be a, you know, between like the high quality, which, whatever, it's on the other tab. Between high quality, between like the good base, and between getting double influence, it might cost you like 20 to 25 div, right? And that sounds like a lot when you're throwing it into recombinators. But we're skipping the 1+1 step, so this is only going to take us like 4 recombinations on average. So you're going to get one item that's like this, where you have, you know, here's your cheap mod, and here's one of your expensive mods. And then you might have another item, so you'll prep another item, and this is just a throwaway. Like, I was getting these from Faustus. I use this method, by the way, to craft like this hat. The prefixes are not that good. I'm going to finish them maybe at some point, but you can see it has the triple suffix that you really care about. So you can just get these from Faustus, gambling for strength dex helmets, and then you just throw on, in this case I was using hollow corroded fundamental, to basically get a item with an abyssal socket and then 2 of these N and N suffixes. Dexterity and strength don't roll on intelligence bases, right? So I think in my case I was using, I would fossil spam until I got abyssal plus 1 of the N and N mods, and then I would actually just get another item, roll 2 N and N suffixes, and actually recombinate to get 3. I think it worked out that that was the cheapest way, and that's, you know, not that expensive to do. It's going to cost you a handful of divs per attempt. But then all you're going to do is you're going to smash together this item plus this item in the recombinator, and so what's going to happen is you're going to get into the mod pool. It's going to the way that recombination works is that it will throw all the suffixes into one common pool. So it's going to throw tier 1 flat int, tier 1 percent int, abyssal socket, dexterity, and strength. And then it's going to flip a coin. Alright, and this is the painful coin flip. It's going to 50-50 on whether you get your Lich's Circlet or not. So if you roll that 50-50 and you win, then there's a 57% chance of getting 3 mods. So let's assume you do, right? You get the 50-50, you get the Lich's Circlet, and now there's 5 mods to choose from. Well, it's going to look at these 2 mods and say, well, these cannot roll on a Lich's Circlet, so I'm never going to pick them. So now you only have the abyssal socket, the flat int, and the percent int to choose from. So if you get that 57% chance with 5 input and 3 mod output, it can only choose those 3 mods that you care about, meaning it's a little bit over a 1 in 4 chance, right? First you have to win the 50-50, and then you have to win a slightly more than a 50-50, and then the output item will have all 3 of these, right? You have a 50% chance of losing your expensive base, which is going to cost you 25 div when that happens, so on average that might happen twice during this process, which, yeah, it's going to put you 50 div in the hole, and 4 recombination attempts total, but it's still going to be a lot cheaper, for example, than doing the Captain Lance suggested method, which people on Reddit were vehemently advocating for, where if you wanted an item with similar amounts of affixes, you get, like, you know, Corroded, Sanctified, Fundamental, and Hollow, which, according to Path of Exile, is the optimal combination. You can see the numbers for others if you think that the other ones are actually more efficient based on prices. I don't know. But this is like 200 divines of Hollow Fossils alone to hit that, right? And I don't care about memory strands, right? Memory strands, you might pay a lot of currency in order to get a good strand base, and then you'll just pray to unravel and increase to intelligence, right? But even if you double, right? Even if you double the success rate of this, so let's be really generous and say that this costs you 100 divs, this recombination-based method should still be cheaper, right? And then, you know, if you're doubling this likelihood by accepting that tier 2 intelligence is possible, you might still get fucked because Orb of Unraveling is not a guarantee. So, just by using NNN mods, by, you know, stacking these mods that cannot transfer, you can increase the success rate of a craft like this by a lot and make it actually, you know, economically feasible to do this. And this finished helmet, like the abyssal socket int and percent int, is, I don't know, like, it's expensive, right? You see, so I don't know, we'll make it the non-elevated version. You see, it's like, it's selling for a lot. I'm pretty sure this item itself is not worth 550 divines or a mirror. I think there's just something going on with, you know, people being online or offline. I don't know, let's see. Right? I don't think it's 100. Well, 100 div actually makes sense for a non-elevated, but you can see that this is worth a lot, and you could probably actually profit craft this if you're willing to absorb, you know, maybe being unlucky every now and then with recombinators, but on average, this could actually be a solid profit craft. I think I'm a little bit late in the league to really want to do that. I think I just kind of want to blast and maybe quit, but, you know, that's kind of the gist of it. With NNN mods, you can get really, really good items for cheaper than what people are otherwise crafting them for. So kind of in conclusion, you know, and these are lessons to myself a lot, this is kind of a reflection on missed opportunities for making currency for me and thinking about ways that I could improve my future leagues. So you really want to be on the lookout for popular gear that can be recombined easily, right? Like, follow the content creators, follow Fubgun, follow like Tuna and other people, and see what kind of gear they're using and recommending other people use, and be on the lookout for opportunities to recombinate craft these, because especially if the content creator does not outline a recombination method, if you can identify a way to undercut their crafting, you can make a lot of profit. Like, one easy example of this that I outlined before is just making 3 tier 1 energy shield prefixes. That is still profitable 2 months into the league, right? So yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say about all of that. Good luck, and let me know what you think, or if you disagree or agree or something. I don't know. if it sounds like I called out some content creators, I kind of apologize for that. I think, you know, content creation is a really difficult thing to do in a full-time setting, so these people putting out guides and putting out a lot of content to help other players get ahead, I think it's generally speaking a really, really good thing. And I don't know, I think that that there's just you know, maybe opportunities for leveraging that in order to like make a little bit more currency. So thanks everybody. Bye.